Welcome to MiWeek, and thanks so much for joining me. I'm Christy McDonald. Big show coming up for you. Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Nancy Kaffer of the Detroit Free Press are at the table to take on some of the biggest headlines this week. We're also going to be debating taking the politics out of redistricting and why you may end up voting on it. That's coming up for you. Plus, we'll take you on board the QLINE. Nolan talks with Matt Cullen and Kresge's Rapson about the bigger transportation picture in Detroit, all while cruising down Woodward. You'll see it. And the bigger job for Detroit schools now that the EAA is ending. You'll hear one thing Interim Superintendent Alicia Merriweather says the district still has to focus on, and that is all coming up for you. So let's get started with our contributors tonight. Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Nancy Kaffer of the Detroit Free Press. Stephen Henderson is off tonight. Nancy, welcome back. It's good to see you.
It's my pleasure.
All right, we've got a lot of things to talk about tonight, but we can't not quickly talk about what's happening in Washington. Of course, we taped the show a little bit earlier on Thursday, but Nolan, Republicans in the House, they're saying, look, we've got the votes this time to repeal Obamacare. What's so different this time around now?
Well, I mean, they had lost some of the moderates when they tightened up the proposal to give states more flexibility. There were some worries that the new policies would cut people off who had pre-existing conditions. Fred Upton went in yesterday, got another $8 billion for the high-risk pool, and those moderates seem to be satisfied with that. I think it didn't quite go far enough. You talk to insurance experts and the people in the insurance industry, and they describe the problem with the current law is that you can buy insurance when you need it and then drop it when you don't. It's sort of like the 7-day auto insurance, and without continuous coverage, that whole coverage of pre-existing conditions doesn't work. You've got to keep your policies going, and I don't think this new legislation addresses that.
Democrats really concerned, Nancy, obviously at the millions of people who would be losing their health care under this, and the fact that the Congressional Budget Office didn't have a chance to relook at this new plan before anyone's going to be voting on it today.
One of the biggest triumph of Obamacare is probably that it has made simply repealing it politically unpalatable. You have to have a replacement. You have to cover people who are currently covered. We should be covering more people, but what's really disingenuous about this particular replacement law is that the worst consequences that are going to hurt the most people don't kick in until after the next elections.
All right.
Well, that sounds familiar. That was like the original Obamacare was designed to excuse any of the people who crafted it and voted for it for the consequences. So.
Well, we're going to have to see what happens with the vote
here
today. And again, it's being kicked to the Senate, and we'll have to see then again what they end up doing with some of it. All right, let's take a ride now on the QLINE. The M1 rail in Detroit will be open to the public on May 12th. But Nolan got a ride this week along with other media and had a chance to talk to QLINE head Matt Cullen and funder Rapson from the Kresge Foundation. Take a look.
They've been testing it and giving media tours all day. So we're also joined by Matt Cullen, who is the CEO of this whole enterprise, and Rapson, the head of the Kresge Foundation, who paid for a whole lot of it. Rip, this day's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Yeah, way too long, yeah. I figure it's about 2 cents a day for the amount of money we put in.
How much money did Kresge put in, Rip?
We ended up putting in about $50 million, a little bit more.
And this is a $140 million project?
Approximately.
And what percentage of that came from foundations and private contributions?
You want to break that out?
This is Matt Cullen.
Over $100 million came philanthropically, and so the project actually, the capital is 140, but there's other costs too. So we're closer to 170, 180 million dollars, and well over $100 million came philanthropically from the foundations and the corporate community.
And for the next few years, at least, you've got an endowment to operate it, correct?
We do. So we've been working to raise the funds necessary, and we have 5 years already in place, and we're working to expand on that.
So this is Detroit, so every good thing comes with a lot of grumbling, and we've been hearing some grumbling over the last few days about, this isn't the real need in terms of mass transit in Detroit. You all don't pretend that this is a solution to Detroit's transportation problems, do you?
No, not at all. I mean, we expect it to be a catalyst. We expect it to be a catalyst for regional transit because we need better transit in the whole area. We were very disappointed. I mean, we wanted this to be a catalyst for transit, for economic development. We were disappointed last year with the RTA results, but we're, sort of understanding of it, and I think we're all going to sort of circle back and get that done next time. But it's the beginning, and I think if you look at every community across the United States that's done transit, it starts and then it expands on it, and that's what we expect.
So this is a 3.3 mile route. Takes us from.
Excuse me, we like to go 6.6 miles because it goes both ways.
Well, okay. That I guess that is true. Both sides of the street. So you got this 3.3 miles from New Center to Campus Martius, just a little beyond. Connects downtown to Midtown and to the News Center. The Medical Center, Wayne State, the Cultural Center, knits together this downtown footprint, which is rather sprawling, for the first time.
It does. I mean, if you think of, I don't know, as a community, but we're pretty unique. You think the incredible density of activities and development we have along this corridor. You know, the culture communities and the universities and the hospitals and the business community and what have you. And to be able to, with one 3.5 mile route, to tie together that kind of opportunity is pretty unique I think in the country.
So as we're driving down Woodward and along this corridor, we're already seeing signs of development, of new construction, a much better look along the route than we saw just a few years ago. What kind of economic activity do you all expect this to spur?
Well, I think the activity we've already seen suggests the activity we will see. I mean, Matt can talk in greater detail, but we commissioned a survey of how much money has actually gone into property development all along the route just to this date, over $7 billion. And when we were thinking of the payback, essentially the return on investment of a rail project for, let's say, $150 million, say it was a multiplier of 5 or even 6 times, that would have given you maybe $1 billion of return. We're actually looking at 7 times that. So I think what you're seeing is just the beginning. And the other thing I think, Nolan, is that these will essentially be acupuncture points. They will radiate out. It's not just up and down Woodward, but as you go to the east and you go to the west, you can already begin to see the kind of energy that's getting created along Cass and 3rd and everywhere in between.
So, Matt, you see people making investment decisions in Detroit based on this route?
No question. I mean, development along this corridor is just exploding. I mean, there was a study done not very long ago that the percentage of properties that have transferred hands from the riverfront to the boulevard and the north end between the expressways is incredible. And all of that was in anticipation of this project, I think, to a large extent. So, as Rip said, $7 billion worth of development so far, you know, as opposed to 4 to 6 times, 50 times so far, and that's just since 2013. And it wasn't just the economic development; it's redoing the street itself. I mean, it was beat up, 100-year-old infrastructure. The street lights were going out. Now it's a beautiful street avenue in the middle of the city of Detroit. Now we got high-speed wireless here. Now we have all the streetlights on a grid that's going to be taken care of. So it really becomes what it was from the beginning, the spine of the center of the city that you can attach to and build off of.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting when he's talking about the economic development and things that have been happening around the QLINE. Go ahead and Nolan, give us a sense of what it was like to ride it and kind of our overall experience. I love the video.
Moved a lot quicker than I had expected. The stops weren't all that long or that bad. Smooth ride. I mean, it was incredibly smooth ride. I mean, I thought it was pretty cool. I could see folks using it for short jaunts up Woodward. It took about 23 minutes to get from the start to the finish, but most people won't be riding it that long. Most people will be on it for 5-10 minutes. I think it'll really cut down on the parking issues downtown. The hope is, and I think that'll come to fruition, is that people will park on the outer edges now of downtown, the folks who do commute by car, and then ride this QLINE in. I think that'll be possible. I mean, parking spaces downtown are inching up toward $200, $250 a month. You've got to have some relief. I think this will provide that. And, you know, you can see what's going on Woodward. Woodward looks a lot better from start to finish, at least to the boulevard, than it did before this thing started.
Nancy, why don't you go ahead and we talked about, or you know, Nolan asked Rip and Matt Cullen and talking about how this is the beginning of maybe something a little bit more and how this links into a larger transit picture. I think everyone in Southeast Michigan can agree that we're not totally the transit mecca that that we want to be. But how do you see the QLINE fitting into possibilities in the future?
I feel like there's a little bit of optimism happening there. The heavy lift in terms of getting us moving forward on transit is getting folks in Oakland and Macomb counties, I guess specifically Macomb County is what derailed the RTA millage in the last election, to understand the value to the region of supporting a regional transit system, and we're not there yet. We don't have the RTA millage last fall that would have created this integrated regional transit system with these rapid bus lines that would have functioned a lot like a train on dedicated routes on major arteries, went down, and that was kind of the big hope everybody who works in transit was really putting a lot of hope on. So, you know, I don't know that this in and of itself becomes a catalyst for more transit development. It would be great if it did, though.
Well,
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they're looking at, Rapson said he expects in 10 years this thing will go past 8 Mile. They eventually hope they can raise the money to bring it all the way up to Pontiac. Now, that's going to take some federal help. Federal government bailed out of this project in favor of RTA. RTA went down, and so in terms of a comprehensive plan, we're nowhere right now. I think they need to go back and design a 21st century plan that includes the prospect of autonomous vehicles coming, deals with the reality of Lyft and Uber, which the previous plan did not, and really take a look out 10 years at how people will be commuting and how people are starting to commute already with these rideshare programs, and build all of that in. I mean, for example, I'm not sure, you know, a big chunk of this RTA plan dealt with small buses that picked people up and took them to the doctor's office or what have you. And I think Lyft and Uber, if you develop contracts with them, could do that same thing a lot more efficiently.
Well, that wasn't actually a big part of the transit plan. That was some stuff they kind of had to throw in to sort of pacify some folks in North Oakland County who were irritable about the plan not giving them enough service. That was not what the whole RTA plan was predicated on.
Oh no, but it was a chunk of it. It was a big chunk.
I think this is good, though. I think, as Nolan was saying, this is going to ease congestion in downtown. Something Dan Gilbert, who owns so many buildings downtown and has all these employees, is now parking people north of the boulevard, and he has this fleet of shuttles that take people from up north of the boulevard to offices downtown. So this, presumably, he'll be able to put his people on the QLINE, which I wish we were still calling the M1 rail, on the I'm gonna call it that. Put them on the M1 instead of on this. You see these parking shuttle things all over downtown, and those don't help traffic congestion because they have to stop for pickup. Sometimes those don't go real smoothly. Sometimes they're stuck waiting. They're unwieldy. So getting some of those off the road, I mean, I'm assuming he would put his people on the train instead of the shuttles, is going to help alleviate some congestion in the downtown.
Right, and that opens. So it opens up May 12th. People will be able to. Opens
up May 12th. It's a cheap ride, $1.50.
And it looked like it was like a Detroit News field trip there. We saw Ingrid Jacques in there.
Yeah, they took our staff out. I think they took the Free Press staff out earlier in the day and other media outlets.
Nancy, you're going to have to get on that ride next time.
I missed it. I can't. I'm looking forward to riding it. It looks like a good time.
But it's $1.50. You got 3 hours with that $1.50. So you can go up, get lunch, and come back for $1.50. I think the fare might be a little too cheap. It's designed to provide 30% of the operating costs, but it's one way to encourage people to ride it.
And I think it does in terms of development. Right now, if you work downtown, going up to lunch in Midtown is a huge, you have to get your car out of your garage. You have to drive up there. You have to find parking, which adds about a half hour onto your trip. And most of us don't have a half hour we can add on to a lunch. So this does open up, you could run up to Midtown to shop. If you're in Midtown, you could run downtown to buy something. So that does, the economic development aspect isn't just about new stuff that'll come in. It's about making the things that are there accessible
Making it easier
during
for
the day
people.
to people who are there during the day.
Yeah.